Warren Eastman Hearnes was the people's governor. Determined to lead a life of public service, he served in World War II and joined the Missouri House of Representatives as one of the youngest members to ever serve his state. His service continued as Secretary of State, and at the age of 41, he became the first governor of Missouri to serve 2 consecutive terms. His time in office was overwhelmingly successful due to his constant communication with the public, and he left office having improved life throughout the state. But the story doesn't end there. This is the life of Warren Eastman Hearnes, my great-uncle and the people's governor. Charleston, Missouri is nestled in the boot heel of southeast Missouri and has a total population of just over 5,000. It's also home to most of my extended family, and according to my great-aunt Betty, Charleston was a bustling small town in the early 1900s.
The town was bigger than it is now. We had lots of businesses, maybe 52 or 3, as opposed to what we have now. And kids could play with their dogs and run down the streets and ride their bicycles, and life was a little more simple than it is today. And we had a corner confectionery, like you could have ice cream and Cokes, and everybody met there. We had a place where everybody met, you know.
One of the thriving general stores in Charleston was run by my great-uncle's parents. Earl and Edna Hearnes were a well-liked, hard-working couple with a growing family.
The story goes that when they lived down at Anniston, they had something wrong with the roof, and she was 7 months pregnant, but she climbed on the roof and fixed the shingles. I don't know if that's a true story, but that's an old story they tell, but that's the way she was. She did her work.
His parents were unique. His mother was the hardest working woman I've ever seen in my life. She was a businesswoman when there were no businesswomen.
According to my uncle, Edna, who was also known as Mama, was very different than her husband Shorty, physically and in their sense of humor.
When I was young, she was slim, but when I knew her more, she was pretty big. And I used to say, I didn't know how they got married, because Dad couldn't reach him yet. He had to shake hands with her.
Her husband had all of the sense of humor, so it was an interesting couple. He would do things in Charleston like he could bark like a dog, and he'd come up behind people and tap them with his cane and then bark like a dog, and they'd drop their groceries. And you know, he played a lot of jokes on people, so he was the comedian.
And Shorty's jokes didn't stop with his children. On July 24th, 1923, Shorty announced the birth of his 5th child, Warren Eastman, in a telegram that he sent to friends and family.
Have 8-pound baby boy will trade same for a bulldog. That's how I announced Warren's arrival.
But like many American families, the Hearnes' well-established and comfortable life did not escape the hardships of the Depression and Black Tuesday.
Mama, she had the store, and they closed on Saturday, and she had her money ready for a deposit, and she went to the bank on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. The doors were locked, the bank was closed, and she banged on the front door until they opened the door, and they took her $1,600 and deposited it. And of course, nobody knows where it went to because the bank was closed. Everybody that had money in the bank lost it.
Shorty and Mama eventually lost their store, their jobs, and their home to a $400 debt. The loss was difficult on my uncle, who turned to his doting mother for comfort. Shorty found work at the cotton company, and my uncle began assisting Mama in her new business venture, making potato chips for local bars and restaurants.
She borrowed $100 from her brother and started making potato chips in her house, and Warren says he never wanted to peel a potato again as long as he lived, but she made potato chips, bagged them, and sold them. And of course, nobody could compare with her potato chips.
She was oblivious to anything around her. She went in, tended to her potato chips, got her money, and got back in the truck. And she did that till she was 70 years old.
Uncle Warren also found comfort in his siblings, especially his older brother Bob.
Bob was only 2 years older, and so he and Bob, it's funny, they were opposites, but they got along really well. Bob was much more casual, and Daddy was a little more uptight and got into stuff.
Warren and his brother Bob were very close, and Bob, if you ask him a question, he would read you a book. He'd go explaining it and explain it and explain it. Bob was more serious, and Warren spent a lot of his high school days at the pool hall. And he was really a pool shark, and so that's how he got his spending money. Everybody watched out for him.
Although his schoolwork wasn't top-notch, Mama's hard-working influence wasn't lost on Warren. He dreamt of a military career, and at age 16, he enlisted in the National Guard. Months later, his age was discovered by an officer, and he was discharged to return home. Uncle Warren completed high school, but his yearbook quote read, "I'd rather be the general."